UFC Fight Night Vegas 11, Covington versus Woodley takes place next weekend, and I'm going to be going through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, and it feels so good to have an amazing fight card to break down with a ton of huge names. This one might be equal in terms of how stacked it is compared to UFC 253. I'm not even joking, I don't know why this card is so stacked, but I'm not going to complain about it because it's an amazing card, and as we've seen recently, some fights seem to be dropping off of cards. So if any fights drop off of this card, it will still be great, which is a good thing to have. So we know this is going to be a great card. I'm looking forward to it, starting with our early prelim opener of Jordan Espinosa versus David Vorak. I'm using Tapology, by the way, in my card layout structure. If you want to follow along in my timestamps in the comments below, I'll pin them up there, of course. Jordan Espinosa versus David Vorak is the opener of the early prelims. An amazing fight. David Vorak, 18-3, newcomer to the flyweight division, recently had a great performance in his UFC debut not too long ago against Bruno Silva. That was in March of this year. He had a good performance, but it wasn't the best performance in the world. For a guy who was 17-3 at the time, coming up against a 10-4 Bruno Silva with 2 draws to his name, I wanted to see a little bit more dominance. It was a good performance. He definitely won the fight, but to me, he just hasn't really announced himself to beat a guy like Jordan Espinosa that has so much experience in that division, because when you really look through David Vorak's record, there aren't really many names that stick out to me that tell me that you're going to beat a guy like Jordan Espinosa. Because listen, he lost to AlPriore. Fair enough. You know, he lost to Matt Schnell, which is a little bit undefensible, I'll be honest with you guys. Matt Schnell, if you're really going to be something in the flyweight division, you should be getting past a guy like Matt Schnell. But Matt Schnell is a really, really good fighter, don't get me wrong. I don't see David Vorak catching Espinosa in a submission early, which has been the way that he's lost his fights recently. But before that, he beat great opponents. He had great fights with people. He just came off an amazing performance against Mark De La Rosa, where he basically destroyed Mark De La Rosa for 3 rounds. I feel like I'm going to be going with Jordan Espinosa here, getting a job done over David Vorak. I'm a big fan of David Vorak. I'm kind of rooting for him to win because he's a newcomer and he's got a better record, so it's often like It's sometimes nice for the newcomer to get a good win, especially in the flyweight division when we're in need of some new talent in the rankings. I just don't think David Vorak is going to get past Jordan Espinosa. I'm picking Jordan Espinosa to win. As weird as that sounds, I'm probably going to be going with Jordan Espinosa here, getting a job done over David Vorak. Because when you look for his record here, 0-0, 6-3 is good, 0-0, 1-1, 12-9, 8-4, 13-10. Like, I'm just not seeing the big camoosh. You know, I'm just not seeing it here. I'm not getting any big enchiladas out of this resume, other than one good win against Arsen Tagibov, which is a decent win, a guy who was 16-2 at the time. I just don't see him beating a guy with the experience of Jordan Espinosa, especially after a great performance in his last fight from Espinosa with a bit more momentum behind him. I'm going with Espinosa. Moving on up the card to our next fight on the card. This card is so stacked. I'm so ready to look forward to it. I'm actually closed down the card right now, so I'm buying myself some time, running out of breath while we find the card. I'm really sweating right now. I'm panicking. We can't find the card. Miguel Baez versus Gall is apparently second on the prelims, according to Tapology, which I don't believe, but we're going to go with it anyway. I like this fight for Miguel Baez. Don't like it for Gall. I think he's going to get really badly hurt against Miguel Baez. I don't think this is going to be a good matchup for him whatsoever. I'm going to be going with Miguel Baez, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't like it for Gall. I really don't. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mike Perry beat Gall. Gall went to a decision with Mike Perry, which is you know, it's nothing to shake your head at. I mean, it was a good performance. Don't worry, Gall. You had a decent performance against Mike Perry. You could have arguably won the first round. I just feel as though Miguel Baez is on a different kind of wavelength right now, in my opinion. And as much as I like Gall, and I think he really does have some talent, you don't take on Miguel Baez right now. You look for maybe an Alex Moreno, like one of these kind of names out of nowhere that's coming off a loss, maybe, like you are. You don't take on the next big thing in the division, undefeated 9-0 guy, Miguel Baez, who's coming off a big winner against Matt Brown by KO and showed that he can go through adversity against Matt Brown as well. He's been active as well. He fought in May. I don't know why Gall would take this matchup. I really don't get it, but what I do understand is maybe Gall wants to see if he can still hang, and if he doesn't win this one, he's going to call it quits in the UFC. I could imagine that, because if you're a young guy in Gall and you really want to know, okay, am I actually good enough to make a run at this? Because it seems like Gall is the kind of guy who wants to be champion or nothing else. I kind of get that vibe from him. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who just wants to fight to be a fighter. I've seen his interviews. He sounds like that kind of guy, so I can imagine he's saying, okay, I'll put myself against the up-and-comer, and if I can't beat him, I'm not good enough. And I think he's just made a bad decision here, in my opinion. Career-wise, you don't go up against Miguel Baez right now. He's crisp on the feet. He's beat great opponents as well. He's got good fighters with good records on his resume. I just don't see Mickey Gall getting it done. I'm going to go with Miguel Baez. Honestly, by TKO, I reckon. I don't think he's going to let Mickey Gall get out of there. I think he's going to chew up the legs and then go for the KO finish at the end of the third, or at the end of the first or the second round. Moving on up the card, Darren Minner versus TJ Laramie. For some reason, above Miguel Baez versus Mickey Gall on the card. I don't understand that whatsoever, but we're going to be going with TJ Laramie. As much as I like Darren Minner as an opponent, and I'll be honest with you, he survived reasonably long against Grant Dawson on short notice, which I did not just ignore that. That was a pretty good showing of not getting finished for a while. I guess it wasn't a good showing. He did kind of get dominated the entire time, but still, for a guy with his record, he put up a bit of a show, and he's got some good wins, and he won on the Contender Series. He won his fights, but he lost on the Contender Series against Herbert Burns. But he's beat no one, really, that tells me you're going to go out there and beat a guy like TJ Laramie that seems to be the next big thing, that won his fight on the Contender Series against Daniel Swain, who has a similar record to Darren Minner, and I think they're pretty similar in terms of skill level. I don't think that Darren Minner is going to get the job done over TJ Laramie. It's a dangerous matchup, but Laramie's fought some good opponents, 25-6, 5-0, 5-1. He's got a good style. I think he'll get this done by unanimous decision. I think Darren Minner will survive the fight, though. But I think Laramie will get this done by unanimous decision. Looking forward to the matchup, though. Moving on to the prelims. Andre Ewell versus Irwin Rivera. Oh my god, this card is stacked. I love this one. Irwin Rivera, you may know of him, recently took a fight against Giga Chikadze on short notice for his UFC debut, and actually had a decently good showing, but then again, I don't think too highly of Giga Chikadze. I think he's a bit of a can crusher, and he makes things a little bit too close for my liking against lesser competition. But still, Irwin Rivera went out there and again against Ali Al-Quasi. I thought Ali Al-Quasi could have won that one, but you know, it wasn't a robbery. It was a close decision, a split decision. It could have gone either way. I agree with the decision. I'm not mad at it whatsoever. At the time, I thought maybe Al-Quasi could have done enough to get the win, but Irwin Rivera is a gritty guy. He's now got momentum with a win. He's beat some decent opponents in his career. I just don't think he beats Andre Ewell. Andre Ewell's a real long-rangey bantamweight, and I think that Irwin Rivera is going to run into some problems. And even though Andre Ewell recently, people have a sour taste in their mouth because they don't think he beat Jonathan Martinez, still a really close fight against Jonathan Martinez, who is a dangerous opponent, you know? Like, even though it was like I said this about Dan Ige when he was going into the Calvin Kattar fight. Don't just see the robbery, see how close it was. Even if you think Dan Ige lost to Edson Barboza, Dan Ige went to the wire with Edson Barboza. Now, Barboza clearly won, don't get me wrong, but it was competitive as hell as long as it lasted. I think I'm going to give Andre Ewell a bit of credit for that, even though he didn't really win the fight, I'll be honest, because I give guys like Gerald Meerschaert credit for some of his close losses that maybe he shouldn't have lost. I'm going to give some credit to Andre Ewell. He has had good performances. He was showing up pretty well against Marlon Vera, lasted to the third round, was doing okay in the early round. I believe he even won the first round, maybe. I just think he's going to be a little bit too much work for Irwin Rivera, and I don't see Irwin Rivera having the power to kind of make Andre Ewell punish. I don't see him having the power to punish Andre Ewell, sorry. I just don't see it happening. I think Andre Ewell's going to go out there, keep the range well. He's beat some good opponents. He beat Anderson Dos Santos, who was 20-7, which is an experienced guy, good record, scrappy guy, tough guy as well. Looked really good in that fight. I mean, beat Renan Barão by a close decision, don't get me wrong, but got the job done against Renan Barão. I just don't think Irwin Rivera... I think Irwin Rivera he's going to look like a flyweight in there against a guy like Andre Ewell. I don't see him getting it done. Andre Ewell gets it done. I'll say second round TKO against Irwin Rivera. I do think he finds the finish. Moving on up the card, Mayra Bueno Silva versus Mara Romero Barella. I'm not picking Mara Romero Barella. She's 12-8. I don't have really too much respect for that one. She's lost 3 fights in a row. She'd be cut from the UFC otherwise. I don't know why she's still in the UFC, to be honest with you, but I guess she just keeps accepting fights. I am going to be going with Mayra Bueno Silva because I just don't see too many great names. Now, don't get me wrong. Mara Romero Barella did get a win over Taylor Santos, who was 15-0 at the time. That's the one loss on Santos's career, but I just don't like how many there have been of them recently. And I don't like the loss to Montana De La Rosa. She didn't look good there. And I don't like a loss to Courtney Casey by first round finish. Like, I'm going to be going with Mayra Bueno Silva. More dangerous in my opinion, 6-1. Fought some good opponents as well, don't get me wrong, because normally there's not a lot of fighters to go round with good records on the outside of the UFC scene in the women's divisions of MMA. But in her second fight, she took on a girl 5-0, beat her, made her quit on the stool after the first round. In the fourth fight that she had, she fought a girl who was 7-1. The fight after that, her fifth fight, 7-0. Like, this is this is kind of a unique record in terms of how many good fighters she's actually fought on her record. She did lose to Marina Moroz, but Marina Moroz is a great opponent, now 10-3. That's also a very respectable record. She's beat some good opponents as well. I just feel as though Mayra Bueno Silva's going to go out there and get the job done. I just don't see Romero Barella getting it done. I hate these triple-barrel names. They're so difficult to say and remember. But I am going to be going with Mayra Bueno Silva by decision. Let's move on to a more interesting fight. Jesus Christ, I could feel myself falling asleep. I need to wake up because that fight nearly put me out cold. Honestly, I almost vicked myself for a second there. Moving on, up the... Oh my God, Jesus, I might actually go to sleep. Sarah Alpar versus Jessica Rose Clark. Jesus Christ. I needed a splash in the pan to wake me up here. Tapology, why are you putting these two together on a card? Jesus Christ. Jessica Rose Clark, 9-6. I don't think she wins against Sarah Alpar. I really don't. Sarah Alpar, in my opinion, great fighter, 9-4, good record. More active as well, 29, still not in her prime. Don't get me wrong, Jessica Rose Clark is still quite young as well, 32, in her prime reasonably, but I feel like she's going to start to sort of tailor out of that. I don't see her winning this one, to be honest with you. Jessica I lost to her, don't get me wrong, it's good, but Jessica I, you know, Pani Khamzat, you lost to her, don't mind it, don't get me wrong, but you know, you've been out for quite some time now. I think I'm going to be going with Sarah Alpar. She's got good wins, and again, great recorded opponents on her resume. She beat a girl 5-2. She beat a girl 5-1. She beat another girl 5-1, 8-1, 6-1. Now she's fighting again. She's had a bunch of fights rebooked and removed, so she's been in full camp along with Jessica Rose Clark. This is not a short notice opponent. I'm going to be going with Sarah Alpar, getting it done by unanimous decision. Now, Jesus Christ, let me have an entertaining fight so I can break it down. Meerschaert Bektic versus Luis Eduardo Gregori. Great one. It's going to be short because I think Eduardo Gregori is a little bit of a can crusher, and he's already kind of in his prime, 31 years of age, so this is not a young up-and-comer coming up to try and take on Meerschaert Bektic. And I think Meerschaert Bektic had a real close fight with Dan Ige, and the judges agree with me with a split decision. I thought Dan Ige won the fight 2-1, don't get me wrong, but you know, I thought Dan Ige, it was a close fight. Meerschaert Bektic looked really good. He got KO'd by the jab from the heavens from Josh Emmett, but then again, even Shane Burgos' iron chin got dropped by Emmett's jab from the fucking gods. So I'm not really going to put too much weight behind that, but Eduardo Gregori lost his last fight to Ricardo Ramos. Ramos just lost to Lerone Murphy by first round TKO. He's got a good style, he's very scrappy, just hasn't fought anyone, man. I can say whatever I want about his style. He gets a lot of quick finishes. He gets this, he gets that, he gets that. Against guys who are making their debut, man. You know, I don't like these records, man. 0-1. We don't know. If you don't know their records, Tapology doesn't even know some of these opponents' records. That's probably like they're trying to hide it for a reason. Like they're like 1-52 or something like that. Because they're not showing the records of his second and third fights. Then he fought a guy who was 0-1 in his fourth fight. 5-1, 6-15. Oh no, like 8-1, 7-2. Good wins, don't get me wrong, but just no one the level of Meerschaert Bektic. Like, I know that it's maybe good time to pick Meerschaert Bektic to lose because he's on the downfall a little bit, but come on, he's had good performances. Even though he got jabbed by Josh Emmett in the first round, I mean, he beat Ricardo Lamas by split decision, and Lamas just showed us that he still has it against a young up-and-comer in Bill Algeo. You know, he's got good fights on his resume, and he beat good opponents. He was whooping up on Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins beat Michael Johnson. The Dan Ige fight just tells me that Meerschaert still has it despite coming off of a loss. I think he's going to go out there, make it real tough, make it real close range with Eduardo Gregori. I don't think he's going to allow Gregori to just get off with some wild techniques in the first round like he goes for. And I think he's going to go just straight into top control. And I think we could see a late submission win for Meerschaert Bektic at the end of the second round or maybe in the third round. I think he rides out the storm in the first, looks to control position on the ground, which he was able to do in some moments against Dan Ige as well. You know, I think he's going to go out there and do that to Eduardo Gregori because I just haven't seen what I needed to from Eduardo Gregori. He stumbled at the first hurdle with his career, really. And this is not a fallback fight for Meerschaert Bektic. Like, Meerschaert Bektic is not the guy to go, well, I can't beat Ricardo Ramos, I'll try out Meerschaert Bektic. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I think Bektic's going to get the job done. Second round submission by rear naked choke, I'll say. Moving on, Randy Costa versus Journey Newson, headlining the prelims, apparently. Great matchup. I'm going to go with Randy Costa. Journey Newson's a great opponent. He won his last fight despite it being overturned to a no contest. I respect him for that. He had a great performance. Big KO win. He had some trouble in that fight as well. He was fighting a big opponent, but Randy Costa's really good. I don't like the loss to Brandon Davis, but I've watched that fight a couple of times. He tore his ACL out of place in the middle of that fight, and his leg was not stable. Like, you can watch that fight again. Joe Rogan mentioned it on the commentary. And it was a good read from Joe Rogan. You know, often I don't give him too many compliments, but it was a good read from Joe Rogan. His knee was really badly gone in that fight, so he took some time off. He bounced back recently with a great win against Boston Salmon in the first round. Now, Boston Salmon just got KO'd with a brutal illegal knee in another promotion, so I don't really know how much that win means anymore, but what I do know is he looked amazing doing it, and he's looked amazing throughout his career. He's got a great chin. He showed that against Brandon Davis. He did not go down without a fight, even on one leg against Brandon Davis. He took a bunch of shots, eventually went down for like a lousy takedown and had his back taken, and then Davis is in good position to get the rear naked. I just feel as though Costa's going to get it done against Journey Newson. I just think he's a little bit too big. Journey Newson's a dangerous man with dangerous power. Costa's younger. He's improving more rapidly. Yeah, no. I just think that Costa's going to get it done. Journey Newson's great, though, and he's dangerous in the first round. I just think in a wild first-round fight, Costa's going to get the better of that, because that's kind of his game. To make it wild in the first round, that's what Costa wants. Like, he wants that kind of fight where he can throw his awkward techniques, catch you off guard with something unorthodox. When you look at Journey Newson's resume, like, he's gone to some third rounds with a guy who's 3-7. Like, it's just Randy Costa, I believe, is going to get this one done. I do not like the loss to Brandon Davis, but I will say it was most likely to do with that knee injury that he had. He was completely off balance. And by the way, he almost finished Brandon Davis a couple of times in that fight as well. I'm going to be going with Randy Costa getting it done in a wild exchange in the first round. Probably getting cracked in the process, but Randy Costa ends it with a big shot, finishing Journey Newson in the first round, I'd say. Moving on to the main card, Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald Meerschaert. Jesus, they hate it when I say Khamzat. I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev. I'm going to break all of these fights on the main card. They're getting broken down in individual videos throughout next week, so pay attention to him. Khamzat Chimaev, I think he's a minus 550 favourite. Gerald Meerschaert is no joke, man. I'm going to break this fight down in more detail along with the others on the main card, as I just said. But Khamzat Chimaev, I feel like he's going to go out there and get it done because he's a very strong man. Okay, and he's a very big guy. This is not a 170-pounder moving up to middleweight. In my opinion, this is a middleweight that sometimes cuts to 170, just showing up at middleweight again. Also, Gerald Meerschaert got KO'd in the first round in his last fight against Ian Heinisch only a few months ago, I believe just over 3 months ago, which is something I never like whatsoever. He's tried to have fights booked. He's had them pulled out from underneath him. 2 bouts with Ed Herman got cancelled. Now he's got Khamzat Chimaev. One thing I will say, I can't wait to break this fight down fully next week. Gerald Meerschaert's interview sounds sick. Like, he sounds like he's going to go out there and get the upset. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to put some money on Gerald Meerschaert because he's a dangerous, dangerous guy. And he's had guys like Kevin Holland in all sorts of trouble. In my opinion, he could have a much better record. He could have beaten Kevin Holland. He beat Trevin Giles. He could have beaten Eric Anders. And I think he did beat Eric Anders. And he beat Darren Win. Other than his last fight, he could well be on a 4-fight win streak right now in another universe. He's dangerous. He's big, he's strong. I just think the recent KO loss is where I give the advantage to Khamzat Chimaev on the feet early. I think he's going to catch Meerschaert with something big and then drop him and then maybe do the rest of the work on the ground via ground and pound. I'll say Khamzat Chimaev, first or second round TKO to ground and pound in the first half of the fight, but Gerald Meerschaert's dangerous. I'm putting some money on him. Moving on up the card, Donald Cerrone versus Nico Price. I'm going with Nico Price getting it done because Donald Cerrone, don't get me wrong, you look really good against Anthony Pettis. You had a great performance against Anthony Pettis, and I really enjoyed watching it start to finish. It's Anthony Pettis. Please beat him at this point in your career, because it's Anthony Pettis. As much as I like Anthony Pettis, he's the guy that did not show up whatsoever against Diego Ferreira. He's also the guy who beat Wonderboy Thompson, so it's kind of hard to predict Anthony Pettis fights overall. Nico Price, in my opinion, is just too big of a welterweight. Pettis was still a lightweight at welterweight. McGregor was still a lightweight at welterweight. When he faces the real welterweights of the division, I think there's a bit of a problem. And Nico Price, I'll say this again, despite a loss to Vicente Luque, he was beating Vicente Luque. I thought if that fight went to a distance, maybe they would have given it to Nico Price. That's a dangerous, dangerous close fight there between the pair of them. Luque eventually got it done, but Nico Price was still in there. I mean, it got called off for doctor stoppage, but Price was still in there, and in my opinion, obviously, maybe it would have gone to a finish after that, but he could have seen out that round, maybe. It's Nico Price. He can do anything. He's fought dangerous guys. He's got big KO power. I just think he's going to beat Donald Cerrone. He's just going to be too quick and wild early, and I think you need to be quick and wild early. You see these guys who try and ease out and ease into things, like Quinta tried to ease into the fight with Donald Cerrone. Tony Ferguson is not too much of a big first-round finisher either. You see those fights start to go a little bit more competitive, but you see the guys who are switched on, big, with power in their hands, that come out fast, off the breaks, that just no heat up period whatsoever. They just go straight for it off the bat. As soon as they hear the bell ring, they're in the face trying to throw haymakers. Those guys get it done. The McGregors, the Gaethjes, and the Nico Prices. It feels weird to say his name in amongst the others that have beaten Donald Cerrone. I just don't think Cerrone gets this one done. Nico Price looked great against Vicente Luque. Amazing against Vicente Luque. I still think he can beat the better guys in that division. I'm not picking Donald Cerrone at this point in his career. I think it's been one too many. I'm usually a guy, I was thinking that maybe at first, Donald Cerrone's not a bad underdog. I'm going to go with Nico Price getting a KO win. Moving on up the card, Kevin Holland versus Darren Stewart. I'm so glad it's on the main card. So glad. Great matchup. Kevin Holland wins by TKO or submission. I actually don't mind a submission prediction by rear naked because Darren Stewart, although very good, he seems a little bit too stiff. He seems like a little bit of a, Buckley, I think his name was, the last guy that Kevin Holland fought. He's very stiff, very small for the division, height-wise, especially compared to a guy like Kevin Holland. Wings big shots from the hips, looking for big shots. I feel like Kevin Holland has fought that opponent too many times before to lose. Had a great performance in his last fight. Could have finished it multiple times. He's active, he's recent. I know Darren Stewart just had a great performance against Maki Pitolo as well, but I just think Kevin Holland's been around for a while now. People don't realise that, but Kevin Holland's basically a veteran at this point. So is Darren Stewart, don't get me wrong. But he has wins over Lesio de Chirico, Gerald, Meerschaert, who we're talking about in a fight against Khamzat Chimaev. Has a win over him, even though it was really close. Lost to Brendan Allen, no harm there. Beat Anthony Hernandez, 7-1 guy in the first round. Darren Stewart just had a few too many close ones. Even against Charles Byrd, he was losing that whole fight before the end. I'd never seen what I've wanted out of Darren Stewart in terms of someone who's going to go out there and beat a guy like Kevin Holland. I just don't see it happening. He's too rangy, he's too good, and he's got too many options on the feet. And I think Darren Stewart's just a little bit predictable in his bursts. He really loads up on his shots and swings quite heavily, and he's very stiff at the hips. As much as he beat Maki Pitolo, I wasn't that impressed with his performance. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland getting it done just by being too rangy on the feet, throwing that front kick to the stomach, which I think is going to be money the entire night long. Kevin Holland gets it done. I don't think he finishes it, actually. I'm going to go Kevin Holland, 29-28, close decision win. Competitive, but he wins very clearly, 29-28. Just because I think Darren Stewart might get a round or two here or there, maybe in the third, maybe in the first. I think Kevin Holland's going to run into someone who's pretty hard to finish in Darren Stewart. But then I do also want to say that maybe Kevin Holland... Oh, no, I'm changing my mind. Kevin Holland by submission. I'm going to go with... Because I just don't see a TKO, but that doesn't mean I don't see a submission. I still see a finish potentially happening. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland hurting Darren Stewart on the feet, Stewart shooting for a lousy takedown, and Holland maybe wrapping up a guillotine or a dash choke or a rear naked once they hit the ground and he sprawls into a north-south maybe. I'll go with Kevin Holland by submission in the second round or third round. Moving on. Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann, also on the main card. Jesus, this fight card keeps getting better and better. I actually can't believe how good of a card this is. Johnny Walker's going to win against Ryan Spann. Again, I'll be breaking all of these fights down in more detail. Every single one on the main card, but Walker beats Spann. Spann's a little bit too slow in the first round for my liking. Just a petit point. Just a little bit, Ryan Spann, you're good. You're very slow in the first round. You've beaten some good opponents, don't get me wrong, and I do respect some of the wins on Ryan Spann's career. He does have a big win against Devin Clark, which we now know how good of a win that is. Even though Devin Clark's a little bit of a gatekeeper, he got the win against Devin Clark, but his last performance against Sam Alvey, man, if you show up like that against Johnny Walker, problems will be had, because as much as people say Johnny Walker is a hype train that fell off and is no longer relevant, dude, if you beat Meerschaert, you're fucking relevant in the division, dude. If you beat Khalil Roundtree, you're somewhat relevant in that division, especially a lot of people go out there to beat Khalil Roundtree, take him down, try and smush him out, especially Ion Kutalaba, who's a striker himself. Even he chose to go to the ground with Khalil Roundtree. Walker stands up there, elbows in the clinch, brutally KOs Khalil Roundtree. I just think on the feet, Walker's a little bit too switched on early, and I think if he comes out like the old Johnny Walker with a bit more confidence, which is something that seems to emanate from the SBG fight camp that he's now going to be training at, confidence is kind of the whole key around that gym. You've got guys like James Gallagher that doesn't always always train there, but trains with John Kavanagh, Conor McGregor as well, of course. I think Makwana Mirkani, the confidence from Johnny Walker, I think will come out in that fight camp, and I think he's going to go back to his old self, start fast, looking for wild techniques, and I think he's going to KO Ryan Spann in the first round, because listen, Ryan Spann got KO'd by Carl Roberson in the first round. He's been rear naked choked in his career. He's had a couple of losses. I know not recently, he's been KO'd again by Brandon Ferran, a guy who was 11-8 at the time. I just think that he's such a slow starter, and against Sam Alvey and Devin Clark and Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, you can kind of get away with that. Against Johnny Walker, I don't think you can. I'm going to go with Johnny Walker getting the first round KO out of nowhere, looking like his old self. I think this is a great matchup for him. I'll say this, I prefer Walker versus Spann for Walker than I do Walker versus OSP, and OSP isn't ranked and Spann is. OSP is a bit more dangerous of a fight for Walker. Spann, I think, is just he's too ploddy early. And I think it's just going to be a bad matchup for him. He needs time to warm up. And I think against Walker, he's not going to get the time or the chance to. Moving on. Walker gets it done in the first round. Mackenzie Dern versus Randa Marcos. Apparently the co-main event. I don't believe it. But apparently it is. I'm going to be going with Mackenzie Dern. Randa Marcos has had some good performances, don't get me wrong. But, you know, just made it a little bit too close of some things. She did beat Angela Hill not too long ago, which is a great win, don't get me wrong. I just think that a lot of these wins are coming by way of submission. She does quite well on the ground against opponents. She's also got some good boxing. I just think Mackenzie Dern's last performance was like, okay, here's where it is. This is the Mackenzie Dern we've been kind of looking for. She had a great performance against Hannah Cifers, just obliterated her in the first round. Hannah Cifers usually puts up a bit of a fight, but she just was completely all over her. Had some good wins before that as well. You know what, actually? Mackenzie Dern looked okay against Amanda Ribas, because I remember thinking back then, oh my god, Mackenzie Dern's over and done with. She lost to this Amanda Ribas girl. Ribas is now 10-1, just destroyed Paige Van Zandt in the first round, also has a big win against Randa Marcos too. I think I am going to go with Mackenzie Dern here against Randa Marcos. Marcos just seems to be sort of fading a little bit, coming to the age of 35. I feel like women's primes in MMA seem to cut short a little bit sooner than men. You don't seem to see many successful 40-year-olds in the game at this point like you do in the men's divisions. I'm going to be going with Mackenzie Dern getting it done. She's younger. She's she's not more experienced, but she's had good competition levels so far. She beat Hannah Cifers in a dominant performance. She made it look easy. I think Hannah Cifers and Randa Marcos would probably go to the second or third round and be a little bit of a scrap, in all honesty. So I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. Even though Randa Marcos has had some good wins in her career, I've just seen too many of the losses. The Claudia Gadelia, the Nina Ansaroff, Alexa Grasso, Courtney Casey, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Jessica Penne. Like, it's just too much. Justine Kish. There's too much. Too many of them sometimes. And 8 is not a good number, you know? I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern getting it done by submission. Marcos, has a good chance on the feet, though. She has a real good chance on the feet. I just don't see her avoiding the ground for 3 rounds. And I think Mackenzie Dern gets it done by submission in the first or second. Moving on to the main event. It's here. Covington versus Woodley. Oh my god, it's here. I've been waiting for this for so long, and don't get me wrong, this is a great matchup, but it's lost a little bit of the pizzazz and the magic that it once had, because when I started this video, I made a few mistakes. I said Woodley versus Covington, because that's what I've known it as. Woodley with the belt, Covington looking to challenge. Covington versus Woodley. It's such a good matchup, man. I've had to restart the video for messing it up a couple times, but Covington versus Woodley now, with Covington in a better position in his career. If he wins this one, no doubt he'll probably get a title shot depending on who has the belt, or he'll get a big money fight with Masvidal once Masvidal beats Nate Diaz. But Covington is in a better position than Woodley, because Woodley's fighting for his career at this point. Let's not get that twisted. Woodley is fighting for his career. 19-5. That record starts to look a little bit questionable once we start looking at 19-6 Woodley. I just don't think that Woodley has it anymore, and I've said this before, Woodley has got in worse and worse shape. I know Woodley is in great shape, and I'm not the kind of guy to say this. It does seem like we're seeing a fade of a career, and I've made the argument, people make the argument of USADA, and I'm guilty of throwing the word USADA out there a lot of times. There is also the reality, other than the USADA accusation for a guy slowing down, that Woodley is 38 years of age. Like, he got to the championship level. If he had got there a bit earlier, I think we would have seen a bit more of a longer reign. But he got to the championship level a bit late because some of the hiccups in his career against guys like Jake Shields and Rory McDonald set him back a little bit in the early part of his career. 38 years of age now. He didn't look himself against Burns. He looked like a guy looking to survive. And Burns is a guy who puts... Burns had a more competitive fight with Gunnar Nelson and Alexei Kunchenko. Let that set in for a second. Burns had a more competitive fight against Gunnar Nelson and Alexei Kunchenko than he did with Tyron Woodley. I feel like the old guard's starting to slide. I don't think Covington is a member of the old guard. I think he's one of the new guys coming up. He's still young in his career. He's got a bit more of a career ahead of him. He's 32 years of age. He's got time until he's 33. I think he's got, 5 months now till he's 33. He's got a few more years, but with Woodley, I feel like we're kind of dropping off at this point in his career. And I've said this so many times, and this is my ultimate argument for why I'm picking Covington versus Woodley, and I'm going to do a full fight prediction and breakdown video for this, where I'll probably ramble for 16 minutes about my reasons. But here's the key reason. To beat Woodley, you need volume, pressure, pace, and wrestling offense. Everyone who's beaten Woodley has beat him using this method. Volume, pressure, pace, and offensive wrestling. If I had to tell you, list me 4 attributes to describe the man known as Colby Covington, you would list 4 of those things. All 4 of them would be listed if I told you to say 4 things about Colby Covington's fighting style. It just doesn't seem right. I know there's a chance, and I'm going to say this, that Woodley goes out there and catches Colby coming in, because sometimes Colby can be a little bit reckless. And when you have the wrestling background that Colby does, and you know guys are terrified of you, it can leave you open for certain things, because you get a little bit confident. You're like, this guy's terrified of the takedown threat, so I can just get away with some stuff on the feet, and all of a sudden you're on your bum. Saw that against RDA a couple times. RDA was able to land a few shots here or there. I think Covington is improved dramatically from the RDA fight. Go back and watch the Covington that showed up against Maia, and watch the Covington that showed up against Lawler and Usman. Night and day. And that's worrying to see. When you see someone make that kind of improvement, but you go through Woodley's career. Burns beat him with volume, pressure, and pace. Usman beat him with volume, pressure, and pace and offensive grappling, and Burns used offensive grappling as well. Go further down his career. Rory McDonald beat Tyron Woodley. Volume, pressure, pace, offensive grappling in that fight. Jake Shields beat Tyron Woodley. Volume, pressure, pace, and grappling. Nate Marquardt used to beat Tyron Woodley. Steroids, HGH, EPO, and a little bit of meth. No? I feel Covington's going to get the job done against Woodley. I will make a more intricate breakdown about all of the techniques and the things that Colby's going to do. I just don't see Woodley liking it, and I think after we go past the second round, you're going to start to see Woodley be a little bit absent-minded in there when he's looking up at the clock. You know what kind of Woodley I'm talking about, because we've seen it for the last 10 rounds of his career, by the way. I just don't think he's going to go out there and catch Colby at this point. The threat of the takedown is going to have Woodley second-guessing with his hands, because the threat of the takedown wasn't really there against Burns. We weren't thinking Burns was going to go out there and take down Woodley and that kind of stuff. We thought maybe Burns catches him in something, or maybe Burns goes for something and takes advantage of a scramble once Woodley takes him down. Burns was getting him down. He's going to lose. Covington wins, and I think Covington gets a finish, because if Woodley's sitting there looking up at the clock, really feeling real down about himself, feeling his soul leave his body, as he likes to say, I don't see Covington letting him off the hook. I think we're going to see a 4th round TKO finish, not by concussive damage, just by unanswered shots and Woodley not really intelligently defending himself. I don't see Colby, if presented with an opportunity of a Tyron Woodley who's tired on bottom, is going to give up the chance to finish him, really make a statement, and get his big post-fight call out. Moving on to no more fights, because there's no more fights on the card. What an amazing card this is. Like and subscribe. Click that button there. Goodbye. Covington wins by 4th round TKO. I'll make a full fight prediction and breakdown video for everything on the main card, and maybe even some of the prelims. This card is great. This card's better than 253, somewhat. See you later. Goodbye.